Hey Photo Universe. Today this is one of our first videos, and today we're going to be sharing some thoughts on filters. And there's a box for a B+W UV haze filter. Multi-coated. That's what the MRC there under the 67 means. Very important. So what do we use that filter for? Well, for years photographers used to say to protect the front lens element, which is under that filter there. You see the filter on there? I'll take that off. Here, get this out of the way. Okay. So there's that B+W that box came from. There's your front element. And years ago, that piece of glass up front was covered with a coating. Well, they still are. They're multi-coated. But years ago, the coatings weren't so good. And so you just touch them and the coatings would get screwed up. I'm talking 50 years ago, 40 years ago. Today's multi-coatings are very strong, and the technology is fantastic. So people argue, I don't need a filter. Add to that, a lot of photographers don't understand why they need to put a $50 or $100, this filter is $50 because it's 67 millimeter, and so a lot of people don't understand why they need to put a $50 or $60 or $100 filter on the front of their lens. And the answer there is it's multi-coated and as good a quality as their lens is. And they buy a $10 filter, which isn't coated at all, and lets 50% of the light through instead of 0.2% that holds back like this filter does. In other words, this filter lets 99.98% of the light through or more, whereas a cheap filter with no coating on it blocks 50% of the light, up to. So what am I saying? Yes, it's true the new lenses don't need the filters to protect the coatings. Whether or not it protects the front element is arguable, but there's no denying that Canon, for example, does say that in order to complete the weather sealing, which if you look on the back of their Canon's weather sealed lenses, they have this rubber gasket and all the switches and everything are weatherproofed. And Canon does state that you need a front filter, like so, to protect, to complete the weather sealing on their weather sealed lenses. So there's no denying that. That's number one. And number two, you can always take it off when you're shooting if you don't need it, because you get a lot of protection from the super lens hood there, which, let me get that in screen there, there's a big super lens hood. Okay, so you get a lot of protection from that. So the other thing is, what I like it for when I'm shooting landscapes is that if I'm photographing a waterfall or in dusty conditions or whatever, I'll leave it on. Now, does it degrade the image? Well, it is another lens. It is another glass element in the lens path, in the light path. So, possibly. If you buy a B+W or a Hoya super multi-coated or a quality filter, you could leave that filter on your lens and you'll never see a difference. You buy a cheap filter, good luck. I mean, forget it. You're better off with no filter than a cheap filter. The protection and the protection that an expensive, good quality filter provides, I think, is worth it. And that's how I use a filter. And that's why I use filters. They're on all my lenses. I can always take it off if I don't want it, but I can't add it if I don't have it. And if I'm shooting a waterfall and I need it, and I don't have it, so it's relatively cheap insurance. You pay $1,200, $1,300, $2,500 for a lens. Ridiculous not to have something on the business end that's getting pointed out there in the world. that's my opinion on it. That's my take on it. And that's as a 30-year professional photographer. And that's how I use them. I'll take it off if I'm shooting into the sun and I think it's adding flare. I'll take it off and try it without. Most of the time, 90% of the time, I just leave it on. I might take it off if I'm using polarizing filter on top of that. So that's a little philosophical use and equipment review of B+W filters, a little bit of philosophy of use of filters, UV filters in general. This is Edward with Photo Universe, and thanks for watching.